Hey everybody, back in the shop again, and I'm finally going to be repainting my Millennium Falcon. Now, just a quick update for those of you who don't watch all of my videos, because I've actually talked about this many times. When I start working on this project, you will see that I've already kind of gotten started. So let me tell you what's gone on so far. I tried to strip this a few weeks ago, and I used the same process that I used with the A-wing, which if you watch the A-wing video you can see that. And in that video I advocated the use of Winsor Newton's brush cleaner and restorer as a paint stripper, and to date, up until then, I'd never had any problems with it whatsoever until this project. And I'm not sure why, but it may have to do with the volume of the cleaner that I used. It could be that this is a slightly different plastic than the A-wing. It could be a lot of things, but what I can tell you for sure is when I went to strip this with that product, I found that at a certain point in the process, I could actually smell the plastic melting. So I was able to get off a lot of the paint, but not all of the paint. And in the end, I nearly chucked this thing in the bin. And that is because I was really frustrated with the process. But rather than do that, I set it aside and waited until until it had a chance to sort of re-cure out, because again the plastic had kind of started melting on it. And then I threw some primer on it. Right now it's got a coat of Vallejo light gray airbrush primer, and I can already see the surface defects. And what I'm going to attempt to do here is work around them and see if I can salvage a reasonable YT1300 out of this Millennium Falcon, which I've already screwed up. And in the end, you'll get to follow me on that journey. So there we are. And as far as other things that I've done aside from that, because I have decided that this is not going to be the Millennium Falcon, and that's something I decided a long time ago, is I wanted to do something a little bit more unique. This is going to just be a YT1300. I've already filled in one of the little holes here, and then I'm going to fill in the other one, and we'll get to how I did that in just a moment. But for now, there we are, and that's the goal. And oh, one other thing I wanted to mention: if you're going to do a Millennium Falcon project, and you're a fan of you're a fan of the Millennium Falcon, either way, you should get this book, because it's pretty awesome. This is the Star Wars Millennium Falcon Haynes Manual, Modified YT1300 Corellian Freighter Owner's Workshop Manual, and it's a hell of a lot of fun. And it has lots of really cool, interesting facts about the Millennium Falcon, and I found it particularly inspirational. There's actually only one set of pictures in here of color renderings of paint schemes that are not the Millennium Falcon, or I should say paint scheme, because there's really one. And it seems like, and I was originally going to use that one, but as I look around the internet, it appears that everybody is doing that one. So I'm going to do something a little different, and I found another picture on the internet that is reminiscent of the picture that's in here, but without being identical. And I'm going to use that as a sort of general guide, and then kind of go my own way with it. And actually, let me show you that picture now. And I found that one just by doing searches for YT1300 paint, I think was the search term that I used. And it appears to be from perhaps a model kit, but I really couldn't find any other information on this picture. So, but this is what I'm using as a general guide, but I'm going to go my own way with it. So let's just go ahead and jump right in. Alright, so as I mentioned, I've already started adding panels, and I'm just going to do these two. I'm going to leave these open. My assumption when I was thinking about this is that these are probably ports that need to get opened regularly, and at a certain point, you know, whoever was working on the ship goes, you know what, we have to go in here all the time, so it's just not worth putting them back on. So I'm going to close two of them just to make it unique, but I'm going to leave the rest of them open. And I've seen them all filled in before, and it looks pretty cool, but I want this to be mine. So anyway, and I've already done that. And the way I did this, the way I approached this, and keep in mind, I'm not really a model maker, and custom work is not something that I do a lot of, so I kind of come up with these ideas on my own. Now, there's a lot of ways you could approach creating the panel to go in here, but the way I did it over here was to take some tape, and this is thin masking tape. This is actually Tamiya's masking tape. And I'll put links to everything in the description. That anything weird that I use here or anything that I mentioned, like the book, for example, I'll definitely have a link to that. So I made sure that it's really burnished down to the edges here, just with my nails. And then I'm going to take a pencil and I'm going to trace that edge so that I can really see where it is. So my goal here is for the darkest line to really indicate that outer corner. Okay, then I'm going to peel that up and take my piece of plastic card. This is really thin stuff. It's like almost paper thin. And I'm going to just stick this right down to the plastic card. And then using those lines as a guide, I am cutting this out. Really need to replace this thing. Alright, and I really want to, I think I want it on the inside of the black line. I don't know if I did that with that last piece. Test fit it, see how close we are. It's pretty close. I need to knock off those corners. Actually, there's a couple of things I'm going to need to do here before I do this. I need to round the corners a bit, and then there's some pieces sticking up right here that I'm just going to shave off. Just in the way. But I'm going to go, I have a emery board that I'm going to use on that, and I'll be right back. So now that I've got that trimmed up, I've actually filled in this area with some freshly mixed green stuff, and I've used that for two reasons. One, to give this an even surface to stick to, and the other reason is because it has adhesive qualities that I can utilize. And I'm going to let this piece actually stick up a little bit. This one goes in pretty nice, but it's got a little bit of a ragged edge. And this one I'm going to let stick up, and I think that's going to be okay. And then I can peel up the tape. Here's one layer. And there's the other layer. Now, there's one thing I need to do here to finish this off, and that is try to add some panel lines back in. So there's a line here, so I'm just drawing that across. And there could, you know what, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to continue this line here. I don't like this one. Let's see if I can get that better. Let's do this. The back end of an X-Acto is pretty good for scribing, or the back side. Pushing down on that has sort of shifted the piece around. So I think I'll just leave that as is. I don't think I'll do another panel line across there. Okay, so the next step here is going to be to prime these so that they match in with the rest of the piece, and then we can get to painting. So I'll be right back. So I've already gotten started here so that I could kind of show you what I'm going for. And I think the trick to painting this well is, at least in the case of what I'm trying to do, which is again have a sort of Millennium Falcon style weathered ship, but with its own character and its own colors. And the trick is that you really want to continue to have that weathered look even in the colored areas. And the way I'm going to achieve that is through the use of washes. These are, I mean, it's almost like a glaze that I'm putting over this. This is a mix of old school Citadel Lich Purple and Liquitex airbrush medium. I've had some really great luck using airbrush medium as a thinner, and that's what I'm putting in here right now is this mix. And the color scheme sort of follows the panel lines, and which is kind of nice because that means that you don't really have to work at getting the paint in the right place. The panel lines will provide a sort of a natural buffer for the paint to stop into, and that's good too, because then more paint builds in those panel lines, giving them some shadow, and that's exactly what you want anyway. So it sort of does two purposes, and I'm using a much smaller brush here than I might normally for painting something as large as this is, but my focus is on the hitting those panel lines and sort of getting that outer edge first, and then filling in the bulk of the area. And I am kind of washing this in, right? You can kind of see the paint, how it's flowing. With the idea that, like with a wash, it's just going to collect around the details and in the recesses and make my detail pop. And I don't want it to be smooth. I don't want the color to be smooth. I want it to be mottled, and I want it to be uneven, and I want it to look worn, and that's going to give me that effect. Like streaks, just fine. You know, that's going to be just fine on here. And then when I go back later and I add some actual weathering to this, it's just going to continue to add to the effect. I can see in here on this panel some of the surface area that looks a little crappy from my attempt at removing the paint, and this whole area is like that, and it'll end up showing up a little bit more before I'm finished. But I'm not too worried about it anymore. I think, especially after getting the paint in here, that I think it's going to look okay. I think it's going to be fine, and that really makes me happy, because I don't want to, I really don't want this to look bad. I want it to look good, but I'm prepared for it to look bad. Let's just put it that way. Anyway, I'm going to continue on with this. There's not too much to show aside from what I already have, and I just need to follow my guide and lay my paint in and finish this up, and then I'll show you where we are. All right, so I'll be back in a bit. So this is kind of my favorite part. I like weathering. Weathering is fun. And I'm doing something kind of interesting here that perhaps you've never seen, and is, well, let me just explain. So if you look at this area here, this is what we're going for. This is sort of the finished product. And I think you'll find that it's a little bit more weathered than like a Millenium Falcon style weathering would be. And I can explain how to do this, and it's not that hard at all, actually. So you start out with some Nuln Oil, and you can do this with other things, but I'm going to explain how to do this with the shades, because that's what I used, and it's actually pretty easy to do with these specifically. And you just wash the gray panels. Now, obviously, if you're doing the Millenium Falcon and you don't have other colors, you're going to kind of do the whole thing like this. And you're just going to brush that right in there. Not too much, that's too much. Alright. The important thing is you get a nice even coat. You want a little bit of excess so that it'll drop into the recesses of the detail bits. But for the most part, you're kind of just doing a thick brushing of it. And you can do this over kind of the whole thing, really the whole, anything that's gray can get this treatment. I already went into these recesses first, because those I wanted to be extra dark. And you know, at this point you're thinking, well, there's nothing kind of interesting or different about what he's doing. And you'd be right, so far. So, I don't want this to get a weird tide line on it, so I'm going to go all the way around. You'll note that I did paint the underside some. I wasn't as worried about doing the underside since it's going to be, well, not seen very much. Look, I'll even do this because it's okay if we get those windows in there. We actually want to see the windows so that we can paint them in later, and this helps to do that. I'll finish up the rest of this area real quick, but I have a different area that I'm going to show you the next step. Alright, so that just needs to dry, but I have a section over here that's dry and ready to go, so I can show you this process. Now what this is going to require is some Millenium medium, and I'm going to utilize a property of these shades that I normally warn you about, but in this case I'm going to make use of, and that is that the shades will re-wet themselves, and that means that if you put a heavy coat of shade over a dry coat of shade, it will actually break that down and make it, well, re-wet it essentially. So, and that is true for the medium as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of this medium and I'm just going to dump it right on top of these panels. Alright, I got a good, nice coating there. I'm going to make sure not to touch the wet part. Alright, so I'm going to let that sit for a second, clean my brush, dry it off, and then I'm going to rub at the panels. And as you can see, it's picking up the dry shade, but it's not like a perfectly clean process. It's not like it just takes it all away. It leaves bits and pieces on there, and it leaves some stains, and it's a really realistic effect. That I think works amazingly well on this piece. Let me go back over this, and I'm constantly cleaning my brush off. And the more you do it, the cleaner that'll become. But you don't want it to be too clean. Like this is how it looks over here. And you can kind of see I went a little bit too far. Or maybe, I guess if you look at it this way, maybe I didn't go far enough over here. But now I can go back over it with a little bit more Nuln Oil. Or actually, what I can do is take some of the Agrax Earthshade and start doing streaks. And if you look at any of the Millennium Falcon Studio models, it is covered with streaky bits all over it. And the Nuln Oil works really good for doing this. And you want it to be very transparent. All right, well that's looking pretty good. And then you can do that with the Nuln Oil again too. This is what I'm really happy about, is that even though I know this panel is here, it's blended right in. Same thing on this side. Those panels are going to look, well, they're really just going to be a part of the surface. You're not even going to really know that they're there. So, I mean, that's really worked out. So at this point, I need to let all of this dry, and then I need to go and do this process around the whole thing and finish this up here and then do the other side. But I think you'll see that in the end, we're going to get a really nice, cool, dirty ship, and the technique is really going to work well on this. One other thing before I skip on to the next part is I have been going through with the Nuln Oil and dropping it into the panel lines on the purple panels and into some of the detail areas, so that it can get a little bit more contrast, lose a little bit of the color there, look a little bit more, you know, like a part of the overall ship, as opposed to being, you know, a separate thing. So I'm going to be doing that as well. All right, cool. That's it for the moment, and I'll see you in a bit. Okay, so I've gone a little bit past what I said I was going to do, but not too far. But let me explain. So after going through and doing my sort of subtractive and then additive weathering, and you can see I've got the streaking in, and I went and did some additional streaking back past the exhausts here, which seems to be a standard feature of all the YT 1300 pictures that I've seen. Not too much, but just enough to see that there's you know, something coming out of there. And I did that with Nuln Oil, and just really straight up brushing it in several times to get the depth of the color that I was looking for. I also added on a little red, just a panel here and this panel here, and I'm going to go over that a little bit with some Agrax Earthshade. Something else I did is the light gray primer that I used initially. I've been brushing it into some of the tiny little nurnies. That's the technical term for those of you who aren't model makers. The little nurnies that are here and here and here, and it just kind of breaks those panels up a little bit and adds a little bit of more of a visual element, and it adds a little bit to the scale as well. And I'm going to continue doing that too. Like, I don't know, I like how that is. But you know, I'm gonna, oh yeah, that was another part. So back here, there's these little pieces going across, I don't know, whatever this is, the engine cowl. I pulled those out with the gray as well, and I really like how that adds just yet another layer of detail to the whole thing. I did, ooh, yeah, that's gonna, ooh, yuck. All right, well, this is the radar dish, and I tried to give it a wash, and it looks like maybe it actually needed to be primered to begin with. You can still see it's got the shininess from the paint remover that I used on there. So, well, we'll get back to that. I did the underside as well, and this is where you can really kind of see some of the surface area that really kind of got screwed up. But the thing is that, you know, once I did the weathering on here, it just kind of looked cool. You know, it just looked like aging. It looked like the paint had just gotten pockmarked and damaged, and you know, it's been clean, but not thoroughly enough over time. And so, yeah, I'd say that my fears about the effects of the damage ended up being completely unfounded. Oh, and I did miss one more step, and for those of you with keen eyes, you may have noticed already that the purple color isn't so pink anymore, and that is because I added a thin wash of Drucci Violet, and I essentially mixed this 50-50 with the Lamian Medium in order to make it just a thin purple wash. This is really the same color as the Lich Purple, but since I put the Lich Purple on so thin, it really was becoming pink, and that really hadn't been my intent. Not that there's anything wrong with pink, but again, wasn't what I had set out to do. So by putting a coat of this over the top of that, it became the purple that I wanted from the beginning. And one more thing. I went ahead and used a Micron 05 pen to bring out the windows, and I don't think I'm going to do anything more with them. I think I'm fine with them just being black. But at this point, what I need to do is wait for everything to dry out thoroughly, because that's going to take a little while, and then I'm going to do the engine. The engine needs some engine glow, and I'm going to do that with the airbrush. And you know what? Because I don't really have a good way of showing you while I'm painting it, I'm going to be using a couple of different shades of blue. I'm going to go in with a dark blue through the whole thing, and then I'm going to do one or two stages of lighter blue to really get a nice glow, and I'll probably bring it along the outer edges on either side so that glow can spread. But I'm going to wait for everything here to dry, and I'll probably even take the hairdryer to it because everything's just lightly tacky, and I don't want to get fingerprints on it, and I don't want it to get screwed up. So I will do that. I'll get the engine glow going, and then we're going to be close to done, except for that stupid radar dish. Grr. Yeah, I'll figure that out. Alright, I'll be back. Alright, so the colors that I used for the engine were Signar Blue Highlight and then the old school Citadel Ice Blue. Started with the highlight in the engine area, just to give it a nice dark base. And then I went to the ice blue and hazed over everything with that. I'd actually even sort of came up over the edge here with the Signar Blue, as you can see, and that's to sort of give it as if the glow is you know, almost peeling around the back. But then I went lighter inside the engine area, and I did, I think, two different levels of brightness over that to really give it that, you know, kicking the engines into high gear glow. You can see I also spilled the glow out over the edge a bit on either side. And I finished up the radar dish, and I think I'm done. I think that's going to be it. So I hope you like it. It's not a long project. It didn't take too long to do. I could do another one in you know, reasonable amount of time, I think. And I'm happy with it. Considering how unhappy with it I was to begin with, I'm extremely pleased with the results of this repaint. So thanks again for watching. And remember, if you liked the video, click the like button. It helps. And if you like this video in general, I do videos pretty much every week. And if you subscribe, then you're more likely to see the new ones when they come up. But thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you all later.